What if the reason you feel stressed isn't your life, but the way your brain learned to react to it? Not your job, not your schedule, not even your problems, but the pattern, the invisible loop running in the background all day. Because here's something nobody tells you. Stress isn't always caused. A lot of the time, it's rehearsed. You wake up, you check your phone. Your mind instantly starts scanning. Messages, deadlines, what you forgot, what might go wrong. And just like that, before the day even begins, you're already tense, already behind, already carrying something you didn't choose. Now think about this for a second. When was the last time you felt completely calm? For no reason, no distraction, no escape. Just still. If that question feels hard to answer, that's not random. That's conditioning, because somewhere along the way, your brain learned that being on edge equals being prepared. That overthinking equals control. That stress equals responsibility. And here's the part that stings a little. It feels productive, like you're doing something right, but you're not. You're just exhausting yourself. Efficiently. Now wait till you hear this. A neuroscientist once explained it like this: your brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a remembered one. So when you replay that conversation, or imagine something going wrong tomorrow, your body reacts as if it's happening right now. Heart rate goes up. Breathing changes, muscles tighten, and you call that feeling normal, but it's not. It's just familiar. Now be honest. Does this feel familiar? Because most people don't realize this is happening. They just think, I'm stressed because life is stressful. But what if that's not entirely true? What if stress is not just about what's happening, but how often you're mentally revisiting it? Now here's where things shift. Because if stress is learned, it can be unlearned, but not the way you think, not by escaping your life, not by quitting everything, not by waiting for things to calm down. Because let's be real, they won't. There will always be something, another task, another message, another thing to think about. So if you're waiting for life to slow down before you feel calm, you'll be waiting forever, and that's where most people stay stuck. Now this next part, this is where it gets real. You don't eliminate stress by changing your life. You eliminate stress by changing your relationship with your thoughts. Because your thoughts, they're not commands, they're suggestions. But somewhere along the way, you started treating them like instructions. Every worry feels urgent, every thought feels important, every what if feels like something you need to solve right now. And that creates pressure, constant pressure. Now here's the twist nobody expects. Your brain is not trying to make you calm. It's trying to keep you safe. And it does that by scanning for problems all the time. So if you don't train it differently, it will keep finding things to stress about, even when nothing is actually wrong. Now think about this. Have you ever solved one problem, only to immediately feel anxious about the next one, like there's always something waiting? That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. Now here's a question most people avoid. Why do we keep doing this, even when we know it's draining us? Hold that for a second. Because the answer changes everything. But before that, you need to see something clearly. This isn't about becoming a different person. This is about removing what's been quietly controlling you. And it starts with something deceptively simple. Just one day, one experiment. Because what if I told you, you don't need months to feel different. You need awareness and the willingness to interrupt the pattern, even once. Now imagine this. For the next 24 hours, you stop believing every thought you have, not ignoring them, just not obeying them immediately. You notice the stress, but you don't chase it. You feel the urge to overthink, but you pause. Just for a moment. Now here's the part most people underestimate. That pause, that tiny gap between thought and reaction. That's where your control lives, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now think about it. What if you're not overwhelmed because life is too much, but because your mind never stops reacting to it? And what happens when it finally does? This next part changes everything, and that's when it hits you. Maybe the problem was never the pressure. Maybe it was the speed at which your mind reacts, judges, jumps to conclusions. Because stress doesn't just come from what happens, it comes from how fast you try to process everything, all at once. Now here's something strange. When you slow your reaction down, the intensity drops, not because the problem disappears, but because your brain finally has space to breathe. And most people never give it that. They go from thought to emotion to reaction in milliseconds. No pause, no awareness, just automatic. Now imagine interrupting that just once. You get a stressful thought. Instead of diving into it, you notice it. You literally say in your head, "That's a thought, not truth, not a problem to solve immediately, just a thought." Now this might sound too simple, almost stupidly simple, but here's the twist. Simple doesn't mean easy, because your brain is used to reacting. It's been doing it for years, so the moment you try to pause, it pushes back, hard. It says, "No, this is important. You need to think about this. What if something goes wrong?" And if you're not aware, you get pulled right back in. Now be honest. How many times have you tried to stop overthinking and failed within minutes? That's not a lack of discipline, that's conditioning. And you don't break conditioning with force, you break it with awareness. Now here's where things shift again. Instead of trying to control your thoughts, you start observing them, like watching traffic. Cars pass, some fast, some slow. But you don't chase every car, you just notice and let it pass. Now think about your mind like that. Thoughts come in. Some loud, some repetitive, some dramatic. But what if you didn't have to follow every single one? What if you could just watch? Now here's a question. Which one are you right now, the one stuck inside the thought, or the one noticing it? Don't answer quickly, because that difference is everything. Now here's where it gets interesting. The moment you observe a thought, you create distance from it, and distance reduces intensity. That's not motivation, that's neuroscience, because when you stop feeding a thought with attention, it loses energy. And when it loses energy, your body starts calming down. Heart rate slows, breathing softens. Tension drops, not instantly, but noticeably. Now wait till you hear this. Stress isn't just mental, it's physical, and your body follows your thoughts. So when your mind is constantly in problem-solving mode, your body stays in survival mode all day, even when you're sitting still. Now imagine the opposite, a mind that notices, but doesn't react immediately. A body that doesn't have to stay tense all the time. That's not peace because life is perfect. That's peace because you stopped fighting every thought. Now here's the part nobody tells you. You don't need to eliminate negative thoughts. You need to stop identifying with them. Because the moment you say, "I am stressed," you become it. But when you say, "I'm noticing stress," you separate from it. And that separation? That's power. Now think about this. How different would your day feel if every stressful thought didn't immediately control your mood? If you had even a few seconds of space before reacting? Because that space is where better decisions happen. Now here's a quiet truth. Most people don't actually want to be calm. They want control. And they think overthinking gives it to them, but it doesn't. It just creates the illusion of control while draining your energy. Now let me say something honest. I used to think if I stopped overthinking, I'd fall behind, like I'd miss something important, like I wouldn't be prepared. But the opposite happened. Things became clearer, decisions became simpler, and the constant noise started fading. Now think about your own mind. How much of your stress today actually helped you solve something, and how much of it just repeated the same thoughts over and over again? If that question feels uncomfortable, good, that means you're seeing it. And once you see it, you can't go back to ignoring it. Now here's where everything starts to change. You're not trying to become calm anymore. You're becoming aware, and awareness naturally leads to calm. Not forced, not fake, real. Now this next part, this is where it gets powerful.
Now here's where it gets powerful. Because awareness alone isn't enough. You need something to replace the old pattern. Not a big life change, not some extreme routine, just small, precise shifts that rewire how your brain responds. And this is where that one-day experiment becomes real. Because for the next 24 hours, you're not trying to fix your life. You're just testing a different way of moving through it. Now wait till you hear this. The first habit isn't about what you do. It's about how you start. Because the first 10 minutes after you wake up, they set the tone for everything. Most people lose that moment instantly. Phone, notifications, comparison, stress, before their feet even touch the ground. So tomorrow, you do something different. You wake up, and you don't reach for your phone. You sit there for a moment. No rush, no input, just awareness. Now this might feel uncomfortable, almost empty. Your brain will try to pull you back. Check something, do something, be productive. But you don't. You just sit and notice. Because that silence, that's where your mind resets. Now think about it. When was the last time your brain had zero input, even for a minute? That's not laziness. That's recovery. Now here's the second shift, and this one feels small, but changes everything. Single tasking. Yeah, not multitasking. Because multitasking, it's just rapid task switching, and every switch costs mental energy, creates micro-stress, keeps your brain in a constant state of catching up. So for one day, you do one thing at a time, fully. When you eat, no phone, no scrolling. When you work, no jumping between tabs every 10 seconds. And at first, it feels slower, like you're doing less. But here's the truth. You're doing it better, cleaner, calmer. Now be honest, how often do you start something and immediately feel the urge to check something else? That urge, that's not random. That's dopamine conditioning, and breaking it frees your attention. Now here's where it gets real. The third habit is the one most people avoid. Doing nothing on purpose. Not as a reward, not because you're tired, but intentionally. Even if it's just 5 minutes. No phone, no music, no distraction. Just sitting, breathing, existing. And yeah, your brain will hate it. At first, it'll throw thoughts at you, random, urgent, unfinished, because it's used to constant stimulation. But if you stay, something shifts. The noise starts slowing down, not completely, but enough for you to notice you don't need to chase every thought. Now here's a question. Why does silence feel uncomfortable when it's the one thing that actually calms you? Hold that thought, because the answer says a lot about how we've been living. Now this next habit, this one is subtle, but powerful. Labeling. Whenever you feel stress rising, you don't react. You label it. In your mind, you say, thinking, worrying, planning. That's it. No judgment, no story, just a label. Now it might sound too simple again, but here's what it does. It moves activity from the emotional part of your brain to the logical part, and that shift alone reduces intensity.
It's like turning the volume down without muting the sound. Now imagine doing this throughout your day. Stress shows up. You notice it. You label it. You don't immediately react. That's control. Not forcing calm, but choosing your response. Now here's the part nobody expects. You're not eliminating stress completely. You're changing how long it stays. Because stress isn't the problem. Staying stuck in it is. Now think about this. What if your stress today lasted minutes instead of hours? What would that change? Now here's a quiet challenge. If this is making sense, don't overthink it. Just notice it. Because awareness grows the more you use it. And what you're starting to see right now, most people never do. Now this next part, this is where everything comes together.
And this is where everything comes together. Not in a big, dramatic moment, but in something quieter, more real. You start noticing space, small gaps in your day, where stress used to take over, and now it doesn't. Not completely gone, but softer, shorter, less controlling. And that's when it hits you. Maybe peace was never something you had to find. Maybe it was something you stopped interrupting. Because for the first time, you're not reacting to everything. You're choosing. And that changes everything. Now here's the part most people don't expect. Nothing around you has changed. Same schedule, same responsibilities, same life. But it feels different, lighter, clearer. Because your mind isn't constantly pulling you in 10 directions. Now think about this. How much energy have you been losing to thoughts that never actually mattered? Not helpful, not necessary, just repetitive. And now, you're starting to see them for what they are. Just thoughts. Passing. Not permanent. Now here's where identity shifts. You're no longer the person who gets overwhelmed by everything. You're the person who notices, pauses, and responds. That might sound small, but it's not. That's control, real control. Not over life, but over your experience of it. Now let me ask you something. Which version of you feels stronger? The one reacting to every thought, or the one observing them? Sit with that, because that answer defines how you move forward. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Stress will still show up. Life will still be unpredictable. Things will still go wrong sometimes. But now, you don't spiral the same way. You don't stay stuck the same way. You don't carry it all day like you used to. Because you've seen something most people haven't. That you are not your thoughts. You're the one noticing them. And once you understand that, everything changes. Now think about the last 24 hours. If you actually tried this, even a little, you've already felt it. Those moments where you paused, where you didn't react immediately, where things felt manageable. That's not luck. That's a skill. And like any skill, it gets stronger the more you use it. Now here's the part nobody tells you. You don't need to be perfect at this. You'll still get caught in thoughts sometimes. You'll still react. You'll still forget. But the difference is, you come back faster. You notice sooner. You recover quicker. And that alone changes your entire experience. Now be honest. Doesn't it feel different, knowing you don't have to fight your mind anymore? You just have to understand it. Now here's a quiet realization. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything outside of them. Schedules, people, outcomes. But real peace? It starts inside.
in how you relate to what's happening in your own head. And once that changes, everything else becomes easier to handle. Now imagine this. A week from now, you've kept this going. Not perfectly, but consistently. You wake up with less tension. You move through your day with more clarity. You don't get pulled into every thought. You don't feel drained by the end of the day. Not because life is easier, but because you are. Now hold that image for a second, because that version of you isn't far away. It's built in moments, small choices, repeated awareness. Now here's the final truth. You don't need to eliminate stress forever. You just need to stop letting it run your life. And once you see that, you stop chasing peace. You start practicing it, right here, in real time. So, if something in this felt real to you, don't ignore it. Don't scroll away and go back to the same patterns, because awareness without action fades. But awareness with even one small change transforms. And maybe this time, you don't wait. Maybe this time, you try it, just for one day, and see what happens. If this stayed with you, keep going. Not perfectly, just consciously. And start living like someone who isn't controlled by their thoughts anymore. Because that version of you, it's already there. You just have to notice it and choose it.